You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hey everybody, it's TV Guidance Counselor. This is part 2, as promised, of Jim Aquino. If you heard part 1, you know that we did a part 2. That's just it. In this case, this is sequential. You might want to listen to part 1 first. But, you know, if you want to listen to part 2 first, you can do so. But you get 2 episodes in 1 week. I figured that was better than doing a 4-hour episode. Let me know if you agree or disagree. You can do so at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or ken@kenread.com or at tvguidance or at Kenneth W. Reed and all the social media. Anyway, right to it. You got earlier in the week on part 1, you got all my junk here. So you know it. You love it. You know it. Here's part 2, as promised, of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Jim Aquino.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
He's back, everybody. It's part 2, as promised. We only got through Saturday last time, if you listened to part 1. So I will say, I don't know if this would be like a sequel where if you didn't see the first one, you won't understand what's going on in the second one. Like, I guess you could probably listen to this one. Maybe? I don't know. Maybe. What do you think?
I don't know. Are you going to edit all of this down into one episode or?
No. This will be 2 separate episodes.
Oh, no. The pressure. I can't take the pressure.
From being a guest twice for one episode.
Yeah. I can't handle being the first of that.
Yeah.
I can't handle being the first of anything.
Hey, you know, most TV
I'm always the first in anything because my last name is, and it starts with an A. I'm always the first in everything. That's why.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You were always, so your homeroom, were you the first one in the homeroom?
Yep. Just because of my last name, Aquino.
So there was no one with an A and a letter higher than Q?
Maybe Akbar. Okay, if there was an Akbar, then pressure is up. No more pressure for me.
Right. So you want Admiral Akbar to be in all of your schooling or anything that's alphabetical.
Yeah, I wish Admiral Akbar was there for like when I graduated in high school or college. So then I wouldn't be the first of everything.
That is maybe my favorite statement to take out of context in this episode, and we're 2 minutes in. So we had some technical problems this morning, but we figured it out. It was a hardware issue.
I broke my headphones. I tripped over them before I plugged them in, and so they broke.
Yeah,
the cord broke. So I don't have time to get a new one upstairs. It's just gonna turn this into a 3-parter if I try to find the spare cord for the headphones.
Because it's an artisanal cord that you smelted yourself.
Right.
And you can't do that kind of work at this hour. Well, thank you for getting up early again. So
no problem.
We're going to dive in. We're doing the week of October 8th, 1994. And if you recall from episode 1, we picked this because of the Star Wars connection. Star Trek. I just committed the cardinal sin of confusing the things. And so
I absolve you.
Yes. Well, thank you. It's like confession. And so we're going to go Sunday and then burn through the week, everybody, like a blaze of glory. I don't know if I'm just reading Bon Jovi lyrics now. This is what I do. I speak only in Bon Jovi.
I didn't know this. You're a Young Guns 2 fan. Well, you're one of the world's only 2 fans of that sequel.
See, here's my theory about Young Guns 2. I don't believe Young Guns exists. I think only Young Guns 2 is a movie because I don't.
Young Guns 1 isn't the first movie's non-canon. Is that what you're saying? It's non-canon?
I've never met anyone who's seen the original. Yet everybody had the soundtrack to 2. People just talked about 2 all the time. And I was like, what is this even a sequel to? It's like the Goonies II NES game.
I kind of don't get that reference. Can you explain it to me? The Goonies 2 thing?
So the only Goonies NES game that came out in America was called Goonies 2, and people presumed that it was a sequel to the films, but it was actually the sequel to a Goonies game that never came out.
Oh, that I don't remember it having a Roman numeral at the end of the title. I was just called the Goonies. Konami did it. They made that game.
Yep. Look back. It'll be it's Goonies 2. And you're like, well,
okay.
Because the game is very different from the films because there's an evolutionary step in the middle that we have not seen. It's so weird if someone just be like, Oh, no, it's just still call it 2. It doesn't matter. And it's not Goonies 2 TOO like Teen Wolf 2, which is the only sequel I can think of that does that really bad joke.
And Splash 2, the TV movie sequel.
Oh, does that do TOO?
With Amy Asbeck as the mermaid instead of Daryl Hannah.
A better mermaid, in my opinion.
Oh, have you had Amy Asbeck on the show?
I haven't, but I've tried. I do enjoy her.
Oh, she's great on Wings.
She's
Underrated.
great on everything. She's great
good in everything.
Yeah, very funny. What did I see her in? Oh, it was an episode of Bones I saw her in recently. It probably came out 8 years ago, but I watched it recently. So we left the listener last time with a bit of a cliffhanger here. As you had said, Sunday morning, you got up at 5:30 again, having got up at 5 on Saturday, not only to do this podcast, but to watch an hour of Small Wonder, to watch what they had relegated to the 5:30 hour at this time, just the 10 of us on USA Network.
That's right, because I picked it because I love hearing you talk about just the 10 of us, Ken.
It's a great show. Did you ever watch it?
Oh yeah, but I haven't watched it since the 90s. But yeah, that show is really interesting because it's a Catholic family, even though they're all white folks. But I'm a Filipino Catholic, so that's why that show is interesting to me. I'm lapsed now though, so
as all good Catholics are.
Right. So being a lapsed Catholic means you still say grace during dinner, but when you see footage of Black Lives Matter protesters toppling statues of Catholics who participated in colonization, you cheer for the protesters.
Right.
So that's what being a lapsed Catholic is like.
Yeah. And it was funny because that show was, there were so many sitcoms that the novelty was the person was of some ethnicity. So
right.
I mean, we're going all the way back to the 40s with the Goldbergs. Not the Goldbergs. Yeah, I think it was originally called the Goldbergs. The first
radio show, not the radio show sitcom that's set in the 80s.
Yes, and then you have all the various Norman Lear shows, and even up to the 70s where you had like Mama Malone, like all those shows like that. But the novelty here was, for the first time that I know of, that the sitcom that they were Catholics, and the joke being those Catholics, they got a ton of kids because they don't use rubbers. And I think that's the stereotype, right? So they had 10 kids, and there you go. And they were a Polish family in the show.
Lubbock?
Yeah, Lubbock. I think it was Polish. It's definitely not Irish. They weren't the Irish Catholics.
Oh, okay.
Of the Chicago, New York, Boston variety, the sort of Brahmins. But yeah, so that was, but it was just a funny show. It had good writing. The cast is great. They did a lot of weird fourth wall breaking episodes. It also had a ton of connections to Nightmare on Elm Street for some bizarre reason, unintentionally, with 3 cast members of the show being in Nightmare on Elm Street episodes.
Oh, that's right. Thanks for pointing that out, Ken.
And then JR, the youngest son on the show, who is now a big television director and directed all of WandaVision and a lot of Mad Men. But he was a Freddy Krueger fan in the show. And he was like obsessed with like monster masks and like special effects makeup, but he wore a Freddy Krueger t-shirt all the time. And when this originally aired from 87 to 90 here in the Boston area, it was on 9:30 to 10 on ABC. And then at 10 o'clock in our syndication market, Freddy's Nightmares was on our Fox affiliate.
Oh,
so, even more for me, it was like just the 10 of us and then Freddy's Nightmares. So it was even more intrinsically linked. Just pretty exciting. And yes, I have met every member of that cast, including
Bill Kirchenbauer and Deborah Harmon.
Not JR. Haven't met JR.
Well, he's busy directing for the MCU now.
He is. And Mad Men is now canon in the MCU. I do want to mention too, there's a really bad Corey Haim movie on.
Oh, tell me which one.
Oh, What a Night.
Is that set in the 70s? Is that like a period piece or something? He's playing like a disco king or something? I believe
so. I normally don't look things up, but now I want to look this up. And TV Guide gives it 0 stars.
That's a rarity.
I know. Let's see. Oh, What a Night is a 1992 film that is about the thing he focuses on best, love. Oh my God. So is it set in okay. 2 teenage boys are growing up in a small Canadian town in the summer of 1955. While their parents go about their own concerns, the 2 develop an interest in girls. One tries to impress his crush with his father's cars. The other, 17-year-old Eric Hansen, played by Corey Haim, becomes enamored with an older woman newly arrived in town. So this is a 1992 Canadian movie, but Robbie Coltrane is in it.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's he doing in the cast? And the guy from 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Oh, and the woman who almost played Captain Janeway.
Yes. So I have never even heard of this. TV Guide seems to
Me
think
neither.
it's terrible. But now I'm
Is that at 5:30?
5:30 a.m. Yeah, that's the slot that Oh What a Night got.
And it's competing with your favorite sitcom. You got to make a choice here, Ken. It's a really tough choice.
Well, I'd probably go the half hour, just the 10 of us, then jump into Oh What a Night 30
Oh, okay.
show.
During the commercial breaks.
Yeah,
Okay.
although Beekman's World is on at 6 a.m., which I also loved.
Oh, okay.
So after that, what'd you do?
Oh, at 10 a.m., Juggernaut on the movie channel.
What is that?
You've never seen Juggernaut? Okay. This is one of the things that bugged me about this TV Guide issue is that they gave only 2 stars to Juggernaut. And Juggernaut is a 4-star movie, man. It's my favorite 70s disaster flick. It stars Richard Harris. He plays okay, so there's this mad bomber who planted bombs all over a British cruise ship, and the British government sends Richard Harris to defuse the bombs. It's directed by Richard Lester. He was like a last-minute choice for director. You know Richard Lester, right?
He was a last-minute choice for director in everything he directed.
Oh, that's right. So it's an all-star cast. Omar Sharif is in it. Anthony Hopkins is in it. And reportedly the entire cast was drunk during most of the shoot because of the rough weather.
So the ship is called the Juggernaut? Is that why it's called that?
Oh, God. It's been a while since I've seen it because I first saw it on TCM, and that's when I fell in love with. That's where I fell in love with the movie. But I don't remember if that's the name of the ship. Oh, it's the Britannic. That's the name of the ship. Because in other countries, it's called Terror. It's retitled Terror on the Britannic.
Okay. That makes sense. What a weird title then to call it Juggernaut. I wonder if they were, there's some X-Men fans who really are opening that movie up and being sorely disappointed. But I'll add this to my list of movies to watch. At 10 a.m. though, this is a tough one. Savannah Smiles is on TNT, which is a movie I loved as a kid.
All of Matt in that one?
No, it's Mark Miller, Penelope Ann Miller's father, who's like an old cowboy actor. And he actually wrote this movie. I believe he directed it as well. And a friend of the show, Donovan Scott's in it, who's been on the show. Peter Graves is in it. But it's about this little girl who runs away, a rich girl runs away from home and makes these 2 on-the-run criminals pretend that they kidnapped her. So she can get back at her parents, and it's a family film, and it's very sweet and funny. And then unfortunately, the girl who played Savannah, Bridget Anderson, succumbed to drug addiction in the 90s. She was a good actress, but it was a cable. It was on cable nonstop in the 80s, and it was a huge bomb when it came out in the theaters, but it developed this massive cult audience through cable viewing because it was kind of a perfect kids movie.
Okay, so you see Juggernaut, you watch Juggernaut, I'll watch Savannah Smiles, which I've only seen the commercials of. I only saw the commercials of that movie in the 80s, but I never watched it. Okay,
unless you want to go with the compromise at 10 a.m. where we both watch Care Bears 2: A New Generation on the Disney Channel.
Okay, let's watch that classic then.
Have you seen that?
No.
It is really dark.
Really?
Yeah.
Care Bears franchise going dark.
Oh, both movies are incredibly dark. There's a character called Darkheart who in one movie takes the form of basically the Necronomicon and corrupts this kid's soul in a carnival. And the Care Bears have to save him. And then in the second film, Darkheart takes the form of a tween boy at a summer camp who has red hair. And when I say red hair, I mean like bright red hair, not like ginger, like bright red hair and red eyes. And he's there to corrupt all the kids at the summer camp. And so they have to stop. It's a weird series of films that are pretty grim. So
I like the animation studio that made those films. Nelvana?
Yeah, Nelvana was great. Nelvana did Rock and Rule,
Eat the Cat.
They also had a hand in the Heavy Metal movie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have you ever seen Rock and Rule?
I've seen Heavy Metal, but not Rock and Rule.
It's a retelling of the Faust story, and Iggy Pop is in it. Lou Reed is in it.
Is it Debbie Harry?
Yep, Debbie Harry, Paul Lamont, Robin Zander from Cheap Trick. Like, it's a pretty amazing thing. This phone, man. So then what do you have after that?
Oh, okay. So at 7 p.m., it's Weird Science on USA.
Did you watch this at the time?
Not as often as I would have liked to, but whenever I saw it, I thought it was better than the movie, actually.
I agree. This is a great one. Wyatt and Gary switch lives courtesy of Lisa, only to find out that the pasture isn't quite as green on the other side. This went for, I think, 3 seasons, and it's basically I Dream of Jeannie, more or less. And which, when you think about it, makes more sense as a sitcom than it did as a movie.
Right.
It is, it's a much better television series than it is a movie, and I have a theory as to why, which is that it removes the weird horniness.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, that's why.
Because that is creepy in the movie. Like it's like obviously, like I get it, it's teenage boys, but by removing that from the series, it makes it the sort of story possibilities open up a lot more.
Right. And you had the star on the show on your podcast, Vanessa Angel. I heard that episode. That was a good episode.
She's great. And she actually read for the part of Lisa in the movie originally.
Right.
And, one of the things that she made them sort of do when she took that role is she told them she didn't want to be like, have this sort of creepy element and wanted to play the character like kind of more childlike or more like their age. Which I think it really does make it work a lot better.
Yeah, that's true.
There's 2 80s movies that I like that I think were better as TV series, and this is one of them, and the other one is Fast Times.
Oh, okay.
Which I love Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but the TV series is really great.
Oh, it has a Danny Elfman theme too.
It does.
The opening titles.
Yeah, and a cool animated opening title. But is a single cam shot on film, no laugh track. Just
it's good. Sort of, I was like, that better not be a laugh track.
Yeah, it's sort of like a Pareto Freaks and Geeks. It kind of has that vibe.
It has that Square Pegs vibe too in the opening titles.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Square Pegs wanted to be. When I had Ann Beats on, who created Square Pegs, she had not wanted a laugh track. She did not want it too sitcom-y and had this sort of compromise with the network. And so for Fast Times, which was a different network, but it sort of has all the things she wanted to have with Square Pegs, even though she had nothing to do with Fast Times. Well, like Amy Heckerling directs Fast Times, the TV series. Cameron Crowe wrote Fast Times, the TV series.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have most of the teachers from the movie.
Oh, yeah, Ray Walston was in there.
They're playing the same characters. The kids are all recast. But the cast is great. You got Dean Cameron, you got Courtney Thorne-Smith, Patrick Dempsey. Like it's a very
the original cast. Jennifer from Back to the Future is in the cast.
Yes,
too.
Who I've also had on this show.
Claudette Wells.
Claudia Wells. Yes.
Yeah.
Who owns Armani Wells in Beverly Hills. Yeah, and so it's a pretty fascinating show. Devo appears in an episode. I've weirdly talked about that show, about Square Pegs a lot, and as well as Fast Times, but they're sort of sequel series to each other. So you're watching that, and then we're doing 7:30
On Our Own. It's an ABC sitcom. It's the cast included Journey Smollett and a pre-Empire Jussie Smollett. So this was where I was introduced to the Smollett showbiz family,
who I had zero knowledge of till the Jussie Smollett hoax thing.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
you hadn't seen Journey Smollett in like Friday Night Lights?
I never saw Friday Night Lights.
Oh, you got to watch that show, man.
That's what everyone's told me. I was really adverse to it because I really had no interest in the movie. And again, I've heard that the series is so much better than the movie.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't care about Southern football. And go fuck.
Yeah, me neither. I don't give a shit about Southern football either. But
really, I thought you were a big Southern football fan.
No, but the thing is that show, football isn't really the point of the show.
Right.
It's more like your favorite, James at 15.
Yes.
And My So-Called Life. It's more in the vein of those shows.
It's a coming of age drama about teenager. Yeah, I need to revisit at some point. It's on my list of shows that I like. It's almost like needing to eat better, where I'm like, I know I'll like this and it's good for me. And I have it right there. I'll get to it eventually.
So basically Friday Night Lights is like kale to you.
Sort of, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to put it in the oven and try to make chips out of it to fool myself into thinking that it's a treat. But but we'll see. Jesse Smollett in both. No, he's not in Friday Night Lights. His sister is.
Just Journey. That's Journey.
Who on Our Own goes by JoJo.
Oh,
JoJo Smollett. This says Jimmy, played by JoJo Smollett, learns a lesson from the school of hard knocks when he bets more money that he has on a game of Nick hockey. What? Huh?
The gambling episode of that sitcom.
Oh, yes, I see. Okay. Yes. And Jazz Smollett is in this, who I assume is Jesse. So
I don't know. I never watched that sitcom.
They're going by JoJo
I just remember,
and Jazz.
I just remember that there was this big showbiz family called the Smolletts, and they had most of the roles on that show because it was a vehicle for a black stand-up. I can't remember his name right now, but he adopts this family of orphans, and they were all played by the Smolletts.
That is weird. How do you get your whole family to play a family of orphans?
I don't know, but it was a ripoff of Mrs. Doubtfire. So they had the black comic, the black stand-up cross-dress. He pretended to be their mom.
So were they basically the Lawrence family of the 90s?
Yeah, they were.
Because that's what Joey Lawrence did. He would be like, look, I'm going to play an orphan in this show. Hey, I got a little brother. How about he's also an orphan in this show?
Yeah, that's
like,
same
that's
thing
fine.
with this sitcom.
Yeah. Nepotism at its finest.
Right.
Then what'd you do after that? Oh, sorry.
No. During the commercial breaks of On Our Own, I flip over to a Duckman rerun on USA.
I friggin' love Duckman.
That's another show that I wish I had watched more often when it was first run. And I don't know if it's available on DVD or if you can watch it on a streaming service, but I'd like to see more episodes of Duckman.
All the seasons were released on DVD. I think 3 DVD sets. I don't think any of them are streaming right now. And you didn't mention Duckman in your book, right?
No.
That would have been perfect for the sequel. We'll add it to the sequel.
We'll add that to the sequel.
But that is sort of a lost show that I think was ahead of its time. Like it felt more like a 2000s kind of show.
That's true.
And was greenlit in the wake of The Simpsons, but is not anything like The Simpsons.
No. What was the name of his sidekick?
Oh, Cornfed.
That's right, Cornfed.
Yes.
Was the breakout character of that show.
Yeah. And then there were those weird, two cute little stuffed bunny characters that were like his secretary, and they were constantly getting dismembered.
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
Yeah.
Too.
His teenage son has 2 heads.
Yeah. I remember that.
Just weird. It had more in common with like some of the Liquid Television shorts.
Oh yeah. I watched Liquid Television, definitely.
I loved Liquid Television. We mentioned Aeon Flux last episode, but
right.
Like I loved the Charles Burns Dog Boy live action thing, and there was just some great stuff on that show. And it feels much more like that. Like it has that sort of underground comics kind of vibe.
Right. It was done by the same animation studio that did the first few seasons of The Simpsons.
Yes. And then they moved overseas.
No, they changed it to Film Roman, who did that studio did the X-Men. No, they didn't do the X-Men cartoon. They did Garfield.
Yeah, X-Men
in the Charlie Brown special.
Twice. Yeah, X-Men switched twice. Or they had 2 different studios making the first season of X-Men, and one of the studios was markedly worse than the other one, and it's really evident.
Was it AKOM? Because I'm going to mention AKOM later.
I think so. Like one was Korean, and I think the other one was like in another Asian country. I forget which one. And the Korean one, I think, just did have like subpar work.
It's probably AKOM, and I'll talk about them later.
Okay. All right. So anything else on Sunday?
Oh, yeah. There's a few more shows. At 8, definitely The Simpsons.
Yeah.
This episode guest stars the late Larry King, the still alive Dr. Demento, and the late Phil Hartman.
Yeah. Who were all 3 were alive at the time.
Right.
And this one is, again, kind of prescient here because it's a right-wing radio talk show host spurs the public to demand the release of attempted murderer Sideshow Bob. So Mayor Quimby pardons Bob, who then went to mayor against Quimby. This, again, we're looking at 94. Like, this sounds like the last 4 years.
Yeah, it does.
And there's sort of a Rush Limbaugh like character in this, who's the right-wing radio talk show host, who thankfully dead. Because he's a son of a bitch. So when we say late in this, 2 of the people we go, aw. One of the people we go, yay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you ever listen to the Dr. Demento show as a kid?
Of course. I have a bunch of the actual broadcast episodes on vinyl. because that's how they syndicate.
Vinyl.
Well, yeah, because the way they would syndicate shows to radio stations, they would press the shows on vinyl and then mail them to the stations.
Right.
How else you going to do it? And so for like all those syndicated radio shows, Dr. Demento, American Top 40, all those ones, there's like 3 or 4 record sets from every week's episode that went to all the stations. My favorite thing in American Top 40 is at one point they really touted that all their music was played off CDs. And they're like, with crisp CD quality sound, which was probably true. But then they were pressing that onto vinyl and mailing it to the stations to play the show. Because not all radio stations had CD players.
That's right.
Which is kind of insane when you think about it. But I always love the irony of that, listening to them bragging about CD sound on vinyl. Like, okay. All right. I mean, you're not lying. Just seems a little bit weird. You obviously didn't watch Lois. What's that?
What were you gonna say?
You didn't watch You didn't watch Lois and Clark.
No. But I was going to go back to the Simpsons episode. How did they work Dr. Demento into Springfield?
Because it was the radio show. So I think he was like, if I'm trying to remember, he was either the rival like show to the right wing guy, or he was on like after. Like he came in and did a cameo. And Dr. Demento was probably made most famous, I think, nationally because of Weird Al, I would say.
Right. He became a star because of that Queen spoof that he sang on the Dr. Demento show,
yes,
right?
Another One Rides the Bus.
Right.
And then he did My Bologna. My Sharona. But yeah, he became big in sort of the West Coast and the couple of markets Demento was syndicated in because of that show. And then he got so popular, people knew that he got big through Dr. Demento, and then it sort of also made Dr. Demento popular nationally. I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. Dr. Demento put out an amazing 2-disc set of punk rock covers, and it's so good. There's a version of Institutionalized by Brack
from
Space
Adult
Ghost.
Swim.
Yes. There's a version of the Cramps Garbage Man done by none other than William Shatner. It's pretty great. Like it's just a great compilation that everyone should get. Then what'd you do?
Oh, what were we going to say about Lois and Clark?
Oh, this episode Bronson Pinchot is in, which I forgot he was on. He played the supervillain, the Prankster, a Romeo with a warped sense of humor who's out to even the score with Lois because her expose on an illegal arms trade landed him in prison years before. This is before Bruce Campbell was on the show. Rick Overton is in it. And I forgot they did have some pretty good guest stars on Lois and Clark, but I just deemed
Richard Belzer. He played Inspector Henderson on that show. I loved the first season of that show, but then the second season, they changed everything. It didn't work as well as the first season did.
I realized recently that show was not called The Adventures of Lois and Clark in any other markets aside from the US, and every other market called it The New Adventures of Superman, which is an incredibly disappointing title for that show.
Because it barely focused on the villains. It was mostly about the will they, won't they thing between Lois and Clark.
Yeah, it's a show about Lois and Clark. It's not really a show about Superman. And in the 90s, if you live in England and you're tuning into The New Adventures of Superman, and that's what you get, I'd be pretty mad. I'd probably, that might be my supervillain origin story if I was a supervillain. I was so disappointed by The New Adventures of Lois and Clark that I became a supervillain. So then what'd you do?
Oh, at 8:30, I want to watch the second half of Seaquest DSV just to see how grumpy Roy Scheider was.
A notoriously unpleasant man, as most of the cast of Jaws was.
Yeah, just like the cast of Juggernaut.
Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss. He's a bastard. But she knows now. Like he'll admit that he just was insufferable. I never watched Seaquest DSV. It basically is a Star Trek ripoff underwater. Is that?
It's Star Trek: The Next Generation in the sea. Yeah.
So this is rumors of a shipboard romance surface when Bridger and Wendy are found in an embrace. Piccolo's estranged father, played by Dom DeLuise, his son is played by one of the other DeLuises, I think. Peter DeLuise.
Yeah.
Seeks his help after becoming involved with an experimental drug. So not only is Dom in this and Peter in this, David DeLuise is also in this episode. So this is like a DeLuise-orama, and Ted Raimi has a guest appearance in this episode.
No, Ted Raimi was a regular on Seaquest.
Oh, was he? As O'Neill?
Yeah, he was the one good part of the show. Besides Darwin.
Who was a dolphin that talked?
A talking dolphin.
Okay. Yeah. Not the same not the same one from Johnny Mnemonic.
Oh, I haven't seen Johnny Mnemonic.
Oh man, Henry Rollins is a super genius scientist who has a talking dolphin as his
Oh, that's where Seaquest ripped it off from. Oh man.
I assume so. Yeah. Man, yeah. Oh, also in Johnny Mnemonic, even though we're not talking about that, Dolph Lundgren plays a hitman who is a monk and religiously has like ritualistic religious murders when you hire him to kill somebody. You know, I think I need to go back and watch Johnny Mnemonic.
I gotta add myself. Yeah, I gotta add that to the sequel to this book.
Yes, yeah. That is a movie that, again, sort of was too late for the 80s sort of cyberpunk thing and too early for the pre-Matrix. So just it kind of got lost in the shuffle there. It's not a great movie, but if remember, it's pretty entertaining. And
Dina Meyer was in it too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else you have on Sunday?
Oh yeah. I was going to mention that this is the second season of Seaquest. So it was no longer the show that Scheider signed up for. And so he went to the press and he was like complaining about how the show had dumbed itself down. It had veered off from its original mode of science fact storytelling.
Yeah. It sort of became a kid's show.
Yeah.
But to be fair, it kind of always was a kid's show.
Yeah, always was a kid's show.
It's a Sunday night at 7:00 sci-fi show. Was Jonathan Brandis in this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was basically the lead. I think he played Scheider's son in the show, maybe?
No, he played the Wesley Crusher ripoff.
Right. But this was like, someone was like, we need to make Next Generation just about Crusher, Wesley Crusher. It's sort of the brief for Seaquest DSV. And I think, Scheider didn't really catch on to that till season 2 and seemed angry about it. But I've weirdly heard that sort of complaint from a lot of people who are in sci-fi shows. Like I had Mark Goddard on from Lost in Space. And,
I used to watch that when I was 3. Lost in Space. I remember that show.
Fun 60s show. Like if you like original series Star Trek, Lost in Space is pretty much right in
nuttier. Yeah. It's nuttier.
Yeah. But in a similar vein. Mm-hmm. But he was complaining that the first season of Lost in Space in black and white was a real hard science show. And then because it was opposite Batman 66, they had to dumb it down and make it about the robot and the dumb doctor.
That sounds exactly like Scheider's beef with his own show.
Yeah. And again, I think it's people realizing that they thought they were the star of a show they never were the star of. And that's kind of how they got them to do the show. I mean, it was the same thing with the A-Team. Like, you're doing the A-Team. That show from Frame 1 is Mr. T show. Mm-hmm. That is not George Papard's show. George Papard thought differently and was pretty angry about it. And I think that happens often. I mean, to be fair, I guess if you went to Roy Scheider and said, hey, you're going to be the second build in this show about a blonde kid who lives in a submarine.
With a talking dolphin.
And a talking dolphin, you're probably going to say no. If they tell you, hey, you're going to star in this hard science show that's going to be groundbreaking, you're going to go, oh, I'm in. It's not like Scheider was doing much at that time, to be honest.
Right. He was in Romeo's Bleeding, but that's about it.
Yeah, he was like the last thing I remember him before that was that great movie 52 Pickup.
Oh, I saw that a few years ago on Hulu. Yeah, that was a pretty good movie.
That movie's great. That is Elmore Leonard, I think, wrote the book of that. And who is the John Glover's the villain?
John Glover steals that fucking movie.
Oh my God, he's charming and funny and terrifying. He's so good in that. If you ever wanted to see the departed Kelly Preston get murdered in a movie, then hey, 52 Pickups for you. Vanity's in it. Yeah, it's and Margaret. Anyway, anything else on Sunday?
I was going to ask you what would you pick at 8:30 on Sunday?
So
I think I know which show. I think I know which show you're going to pick. Tell me.
So I think I may shock you because I'm actually going to have to go to 8:35.
Okay.
Because, and I wouldn't normally pick this, but on Disney Channel, it's Walt Disney World Inside Out. And because this issue is in October, this is the Halloween episode.
Yeah.
And it's a Halloween show, features a look at spooky attractions such as the Haunted Mansion and the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. Also, a visit to a costuming and makeup department. I would have been all in on that.
I thought you were going to
Disney World.
I picked that for a later day, actually. Later in the week, but I thought you were going to pick Hardball, starring Bruce Greenwood and Joe Rogan.
Oh, God, no. This was a ripoff of Major League.
Yeah.
It was a Fox sitcom, I believe.
Yeah, it was.
And this is Superstition compels Mike, played by Mike Starr, to make love to his wife 3 times a night to fuel a hot hitting streak. Meanwhile, Frank buys an island for himself, which inflames the natives, which I'm sure was completely culturally sensitive and not offensive in any way. This is pre-news radio Joe Rogan. I think it was his first TV gig. He had just moved from Boston. He's a short, overcompensating dumb guy in real life, and he got this show and it was a huge bomb, and rightfully so, because it's a terrible show.
Okay. Well, I thought you were going to hate watch it, maybe.
No, I can't even hate watch it. I would 100% want to see just stuff about Halloween makeup.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror later, because I got to ride that.
Oh, nice. Okay. Anything else on Sunday?
Yeah, at 9, MTV Unplugged, and I hope it's the Los, what's her name? The Los Fabulosos Cadillacs episode from September 1994. I'm not sure because TV Guide didn't say, but
right.
I want to catch that episode just because of the set list, just because, well, what's on the set list? Oh, yeah, they did a cover of the Guns of Brixton and, of course, Matador.
Yeah, who, again, that show, people remember like 2 episodes of Unplugged, maybe 3 or 4, maybe 4, like the Nirvana, Eric Clapton.
LL Cool J is another one I remember. The spoken word one, the New York spoken word one I remember watching too.
I remember LL Cool J had big cakes of deodorant under his arms in that one, if you recall. I remember that. He had no shirt on and he was doing Mama Said Knock You Out and raising his, it just looked like he had a snowball dangling from his armpit hair. And they played that video nonstop. But there was like 100 and something episodes of Unplugged.
Yeah, there were.
So there's a lot of bands you probably know of that you didn't know did ones. And then a lot of relatively obscure bands like Los Cadillacs.
Los Fabulosos Cadillacs.
Yeah. Who, not a very well-known band.
No, but if you're a fan of Grosse Pointe Blank, you remember the song during the closing credits.
Yes, absolutely.
That's Matador.
For them to have an entire episode unplugged is pretty cool. And
some of these episodes weren't even unplugged.
Right. It was almost like, well, no one's heard of them. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of just moved away from the concept after a while. I recently learned a Roxette did one, and I didn't remember that, which I kind of enjoyed. I went back and rewatched it. A friend of mine was at the taping for the Alice in Chains one, which is kind of, so he actually got to see that live. Anything else on Sunday?
Oh, yeah. During the unplugged commercial breaks, I'll flip over to back-to-back Married with Children on Fox.
These are both repeats. And the weird thing about the 9:30 episode is it tells you what the episode is, but then there's a little disclaimer that says Fox is likely to air this program instead of the one in Fox's ad.
I remember seeing that in the issue. Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of weird things. First of all, likely to air is weird. Like, that's an odd, like, we think, I don't know, sounds like something they'd do. And then, because I know that they would do the listings do the ads before the listings because of the way that layout was done and all this stuff, but just strange. And then are you doing the second one after that?
At 9:30, yeah.
That's again a show I've tried to go back and rewatch. I remember
you're more of a Roseanne fan. I know that, but I preferred this one over Roseanne. And did you know it was co-created by a black guy, Michael Moy?
Yes. But
Walter Mosley is a big fan of this show. I remember reading this 2002 or 2003 New York Times article he did about how much he's a fan of the show. Walter Mosley, the guy who writes the the Easy Rollins novels, like Devil in the Blue Dress.
Devil in the Blue Dress, yeah, a Boston-based guy actually. I
didn't know that.
I met Walter Mosley
Uh-huh.
at the Coolidge Corner Theater. They were doing a Lifetime Achievement Award for Ted Demme. No, not Ted Demme, Jonathan Demme.
Right.
And Walter Mosley was there. Roger Corman was there. I had a discussion with Roger Corman about martinis. Tak Fujimoto was there.
The cinematographer
yes,
who always worked with Jonathan Demme.
Yeah. And Tak Fujimoto has some of the best hair I've ever seen. Like, it's just like...
Does he have Jim Jarmusch hair?
Basically, yeah. And one of my favorite things that night was it was free popcorn because it was like, and Roger Corman is just eating this whole bucket of popcorn with a big smile on his face. And he turns around and he goes, "Tak, they have free popcorn." And then at one point he finished his popcorn and said out loud to himself, "Yes, I will get some more free popcorn." Then he went and got himself some more free popcorn. But Walter Mosley was there because I think Demme didn't direct Devil in the Blue Dress, but he
produced Devil in the Blue Dress. That was Carl Franklin who directed that movie.
Yeah, I think he directed something based on Walter Mosley. They were friends somehow. That would make sense if he produced it. But what was his argument about why he liked Married with Children? Do you remember?
He related to Al Bundy. He basically said Al Bundy was black.
Okay. I mean, the model of that show, I don't know. I don't know.
I've heard you use a term before. There's like yellow face and white face and
poor
brown face.
Yeah.
Poor face. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what you think of the show. Poor face. I kind of disagree with you there.
Really? It's so cartoonish and you're laughing at them. It's not like
it is cartoonish, but I don't think you're laughing at them.
One of the things about that show that I recognized at the time was people watched it wrong in the same way they watched All in the Family wrong.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
In that, especially with the no ma'am stuff.
Oh, that. I wonder how that will go down in 2021.
Yeah, they were looking at that like Al became sort of an anti-hero.
That's when I stopped watching the show.
But I feel like that was always kind of inherent to the show. And I think maybe the intention was to be the sort of parody, or that like you're sort of laughing at them as like a cautionary example, almost like a parody.
Yeah.
But I feel like in execution from day one, it was never that.
Okay.
That's just me.
Roseanne was originally supposed to play Katie Seagal's role.
Yes.
And Sam Kinison was supposed to be Al Bundy, but that never happened.
No, none of that would work. That would have been, and there was that episode that I think was the last TV appearance by Sam Kinison where he plays Al's guardian angel.
It wasn't his last, but that was one of my favorite Married with Children episodes. It was an It's a Wonderful Life parody.
And then Divine last role was in Married with Children episode. I don't think he filmed it. I think he went to film it and then it either didn't air or he died right before. I forget exactly what happened. I don't think he was ever actually in the episode, but
I didn't know that. I didn't know Divine did a guest shot on that show.
I think he was scheduled to. I feel like he might have died like when they were about to shoot it.
Oh, okay.
And it was going to be him as like playing a man, like himself. So it's going to be like a big difference. And anything else?
Okay. At 10, it's another show you have mixed emotions about, but it's at 10, it's an hour of In Living Color reruns on FX. Again,
which you had done the previous evening as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved the first 3 seasons of In Living Color, and you're right about what you were saying about how too many of the sketches punched down. But there's one thing I disliked about the show, and it's that it was the generic sketches that they wrote for Steve Park.
I don't know.
He was the only Asian American sketch comic on the show. They had an Asian American fly girl, Carrie Ann Inaba, but in the 3rd season they got the first, and this was their only Asian American cast member. He was a Korean American named Steve Park. He was best known for Do the Right Thing. He played the Korean liquor store owner. So I was really excited during that season because, we got an Asian American sketch comic, got In Living Color, and then just being really disappointed with the sketches that they wrote for him. And this is why it's important to have Asian American comedy writers, because you could tell from the sketches that there were no Asian American staff writers.
There's like a contempt for him in the writing.
Yeah. You felt sort of like a contempt for him. And, when you don't know how to write for an Asian person, you either cast them as a ninja or a sifu. And that's what often happened to Steve Park. The only memorable character that he played on In Living Color was Connie Chung. That's about it.
But he did it well.
Did it well. So yeah, that's why when you see Bowen Yang on SNL, you're like, he's hilarious, and also it's because he's a writer.
Right.
He's able to write for himself. He's able to prevent himself from being cast in like Orientalist roles. You know,
Right.
his personality is able to show through on SNL, whereas Steve Park's personality wasn't able to show through on In Living Color.
Right. It's almost like, well, now that we have an Asian person, we can finally write sketches about Chinese food restaurants instead of like, it was like a weird, like, cool, we got a new tool in this offensive belt.
I mean, Korean martial artists are into Hapkido, and they never had a sketch where he's doing Hapkido. It was always he was either a ninja or a Sifu.
Well, again, like we talked about last time, most people in America, regardless of race, black or white, didn't know the difference or really care.
They give a shit. Yeah.
No. Yeah, you could have had them doing capoeira and they wouldn't have known the difference, which is a Brazilian dance fighting, everybody. It's like deadly lambada.
That's the best description of capoeira I've ever heard.
Yeah, I think I would really love to watch a movie about deadly lambada, about capoeira. That would be fantastic. So we on to Monday?
Yeah, we are.
What do you do Monday?
6:30 a.m. breakfast time on FX.
So this you alluded to last time. This was the show. It's basically a morning radio show that they've translated to TV.
It was actually more visual than that because they did it live at the you told me about this, the FX apartment.
Mm-hmm. But the format was it was like a 3 or 4 hour long show, right?
Yeah, and they got it from England. It was from the UK. It was based on a morning show in the UK that I think it was. Did they do it at an apartment? I don't know, but they had a puppet. That was another gimmick of breakfast time. It was Tom Bergeron's first hosting gig.
Nationally, he had hosted stuff in in Boston area forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is 2.5 hours. So it went from 6:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day.
This was the only morning show I would watch. I didn't give a shit about Today. I watched Good Morning America when I was in grade school, but all these morning shows, they're full of so much behind the scenes drama and, Matt Lauer being toxic and shit. And breakfast time, it was because it was so relaxed. They didn't have this behind the scenes drama. It was so relaxed because it was so casual. They did it in this actual apartment.
By the time we got FX, they were no longer doing this show. So I've only seen like clips of it later. A friend of mine was on this show once.
Which friend?
I think he did a pumpkin carving demonstration on the show.
Oh, that's classic breakfast time.
Yeah. But Bergeron's just so friggin' likable and just a good dude. Like I used to work at our CBS affiliate here in Boston, and for about 10 years, Bergeron hosted a local daily talk show called People Are Talking. And there's a bunch of clips online on YouTube of it. And he was just great. He was a radio guy here before that. And when I worked there, and this is like late 90s, if he was home visiting his family, he would occasionally like stop in and say hello, and just a good dude. Just like super nice guy.
It showed through on breakfast time.
And the reason he got America's Funniest Home Videos is he was hosting the local regional Emmy Awards here in the Boston area. And Vin DeBona, who created America's Funniest Home Videos and produced it, who is local to the New England area somehow. I don't know if he's from here, he lives here. And he saw him hosting it and was like, I like him. Have him host America's Funniest Home Videos. And that was it. And that's probably the gig that really shot him through the stratosphere, because that's when he got like Dancing with the Stars and all these other things he hosts, because he's just really good at it.
Yeah, he is.
And a solid dude. And I love that he also very liberal guy, doesn't take any bullshit kind of guy, and is pretty vocal about it, even when like it could have cost him his job. Like when they cast Sean Spicer on Dancing with the Stars, he was like, yeah, this is bullshit.
Exactly.
But they're like, we can't fire Tom Bergeron. And they couldn't. Then what'd you do?
Oh, at 8:30 a.m. Exo Squad.
So this was a show you mentioned last time just because of the theme music.
No, they used the score music on Sightings.
Yes. So you mentioned that the Exo Squad music was used on Sightings, but we didn't talk about the show. And I have vague recollections of the show, but was this kind of at the tail end of that sort of weird, gross out / toxic waste environmental stuff that they were shoving at kids in the early 90s.
Are you talking about the Trauma cartoon, Toxic Avengers?
Toxic Avengers, but even like Captain Planet, the Swamp Thing cartoon.
No, Exo Squad didn't have anything to do with that. It was more like Gundam and Robotech. It was an American take on those Japanese shows.
Okay.
So the soldiers were using mechas called E-frames, and they were fighting this race of genetically engineered humans called Neo Sapiens. They were built by the humans. They were created by the humans to do slave labor. And so they revolted against having to do slave labor. And so this Exo Squad was about that war between the humans and the Neo Sapiens, and it was pretty above average writing. I mean, it was introducing all these concepts about slave labor and like concepts from Blade Runner.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy concept for a kid's show.
They killed, unlike G.I. It was better than G.I. The animated G.I. Joe wasn't as great as the Larry Hama G.I. Joe comic because there were no stakes.
Right.
Whereas Exo Squad had stakes up the wazoo because it killed off soldiers.
And that used to be the tagline for Sizzler, stakes up the wazoo.
Stakes up the wazoo.
But yet, like to put it in perspective, the stuff that Exo Squad was airing against was bonkers, literally show bonkers, which was like a Masupalami type crazy.
Yeah, I remember that.
Tailspin, Dennis the Menace, and Dudley the Dragon. Like these are not shows that sound anything like what you've described. So that's going to stand out. I
wanted to know which the TV Guide didn't list the episode that aired that day. So I wanted to know which, like with Soul Train, I wanted to know which first run episode aired that day. So I did a little research, and it was an episode called Dragon's Rock, and it was written by Next Generation and Deep Space Nine writer Hans Beimler and Next Generation writer Richard Manning.
Oh, wow. They shared a bunch of people writing for both those shows.
Yeah. That's how strong the writing quality of Exo Squad was. But the animation, it was done by AKOM, the worst studio to ever do animation for Batman, the animated series.
Yes.
Their animation was so crappy that Warner Brothers Animation fired them.
Yeah, I remember their animation being really shoddy.
Right, especially when you watch like the episodes that were done by Tokyo Movie Shinsha, which had much better animation.
Yeah, the Batman ones, if I recall, like that studio was one of the biggest, their biggest crimes was like just random things changing color. So like
things going off model.
Yeah. So like at one point, like Batman's like symbol would be gray like his whole shirt instead of like the yellow there, or like it was like stuff like that where he's just like what, or like his whole head's flesh colored. Not just it was just weird. But yeah, I remember that show being shoddily animated, but apparently they made up for it with quality writing.
Right. And with the Exo Squad, AKOM, the Korean studio, the animation quality on Exo Squad wasn't so bad because they didn't have any episodes that were done by TMS, Tokyo Movie Shinsha.
Right. To compare them to.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to give you crap and you're going to like it. And you're not going to know anything else.
Right. And it's on Peacock now. I watched the pilot on Peacock.
Oh, I might have to do that as well now that you mentioned it. Do you remember, what's it called? Spiral Zone or something like that?
Barely.
That was an animated show, I think. It was.
Apocalyptic, yeah.
Yeah, apocalyptic. I always used to get it confused with the live action show, The Burning Zone.
Oh, the Outbreak ripoff.
Yeah, which was also apocalyptic. And there's Rush Limbaugh at 11:30 a.m. when he still had a TV show.
Exo Squad, the lead voice actor was Robbie Benson.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And also I just want to remind everybody that Rush Limbaugh is still dead. Then what'd you do?
Okay, so at 1 p.m., Rockford Files rerun on A&E.
That's a good choice. Yeah.
I love the Rockford Files, man.
Yeah, that was a Sunday, a mid-90s, like summertime, and you're home from school on a weekday. Like it was pretty cool to be able to check out Rockford Files. And
I didn't watch the Rockford Files until the late 2000s. The first time I watched it was on DVD.
The Blu-ray set's amazing. It's a cheap Blu-ray set, but they're all remastered and look great. And for people who haven't heard, I had James Garner's daughter on the show.
Yeah, that was a great episode. I heard that one.
She's fascinating. Was a private eye herself. And Juliana Hatfield's favorite TV show is The Rockford Files.
Right.
Which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, I like that article she wrote about that.
And then what'd you do?
4 p.m. Animaniacs rerun on Fox.
I mean, what more can we say about that show? Is there anyone who doesn't like it? It's just great. Because Tiny Toons is amazing as well. And this just cranked that up even more. I mean, Tiny Toons, maybe not in hindsight, was as great as it felt at the time, but when that started, it was like just blew my head off.
Yeah, I could see that.
And again, a lot of people worked on Tiny Toons that worked on Batman the Animated Series.
That's right.
So you have, a pretty good writer's room there.
And during the commercial breaks, I flip over to Transformers Generation 2, a rerun on WDCA. Was
this the Headmasters thing?
No, what Generation 2 was, they just repackaged a bunch of episodes from the 80s Transformers animated series. They just added these pointless CGI interstitials and pointless graphics.
That's pretty clever, though. Just call it Generation 2 with new ad breaks.
New interstitials. So it's like the Goonies 2 of Transformers. It is.
When I got a PlayStation 4 a year and a half ago, this is going somewhere. I had not played a video game since Sega Genesis, and like one of the things I really wanted to do is to be able to like play an 80s cartoon, like, because you could do that. Like, you make a game that looks exactly like a cartoon you're watching, but you're playing it. And surprisingly, there's almost no games like that, but there is a Transformers game that looks exactly like the 80s cartoon. And when you're playing it, it's like you're watching the cartoon that you can actually control, but it's a really boring game. It looks cool, but it's just like nothing really happens. So get on it, game people.
That sounds like all the Michael Bay Transformers movies. Nothing really happens.
Yeah, it's like the plot of that, but with the looks of the 80s cartoon. Then what'd you do?
Well, I was going to say, I have one more thing about Transformers. The reason why I want to watch this rerun is I want to see if my favorite character, Grimlock, is in it.
The Dinobot.
Who talks like a caveman and doesn't give a shit about Optimus, hates Optimus, doesn't want him to be the leader anymore.
He is the leader of the Dinobots. He turns into a Tyrannosaur.
That's right.
I have, and I don't want to make you jealous here, a one-of-a-kind prototype Grimlock hoodie that you put it on and it's got the dino head and everything that they decided not to produce because that's a pretty limited market. But I do have the one that the company that licensed it made.
Is it in the room right now? Your room right now?
It's upstairs on my clothes rack, but along with my prototype Ferris Bueller leather jacket and my Shredder hoodie. Which has like the whole gauntlets and is pretty cool. I'm a 40-year-old man, everybody.
Did you know Casey Kasem quit Transformers because it was racist?
What was the racist part that he didn't like?
I'm trying to remember, but there was some anti-Arab shit in the writing, and Kasem was Palestinian, I think.
Yeah.
Was he Palestinian or no? He was Lebanese.
Lebanese, yeah.
And so he did voices on this show. He voiced one of the Autobots, and so when he found out there was like this anti-Arab slur in the script, he bounced. He quit.
Yeah, I mean, he did a lot of that kind of thing. He was notoriously prickly, and in that case, justifiably so.
Yeah.
But it doesn't surprise me. Like, given cartoons in the 80s, there was always an episode where they like go to an Arab, oil-rich country for an episode and have to fight some evil. Yeah. So that doesn't surprise me, especially if you're doing a show where there's like truckers and like trucks and cars. Right. You gotta have an oil episode. Got to. So then what'd you do?
At 8 p.m., The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah, that 94, that's the move on a Monday night, really.
Right.
CBS, who I was very loyal to on Mondays, by this point, they'd gone over to the nanny side. So I was not really that interested. This is Fresh Prince. This is, not a super great episode of Fresh Prince, but,
it's got Brad Garrett in it.
It does have Brad Garrett in it, who also did a ton of cartoon voices. Including most of the wrestlers in Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling.
Oh, that's right. I read that somewhere.
So good move. And then what'd you do?
Oh, during the Fresh Prince's commercial breaks, I flip over to Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It's one of their comedy episodes.
So I don't think I've ever seen this episode, but
I saw it on Netflix a few years ago. It became one of my favorite Star Trek comedy episodes. It's called The House of Quark.
Oh, it would make sense that it would be a Quark episode if it's a comedy episode.
Yeah.
And it's good because the comedy episodes never really did much for me.
Yeah. On most of the Star Trek shows, no, the comedy episodes didn't really work. But on Deep Space, the Deep Space Nine comedy episodes were the best, in my opinion, the best Star Trek comedy episodes.
Why?
Well, this one's really good. It's Quark. It's Quark accidentally kills a Klingon, and so to make a long story short, he ends up marrying a Klingon woman and saves her from financial ruin.
Okay. So it's
he uses his accounting skills to save her from being scammed by a Klingon house.
So it's like a Married with Children episode.
Kinda. Except but this one's really hilarious.
All right, I'll put it on the list. I'll revisit. So that's an hour, and then what'd you do?
Well, and then at 8:30, I just watched the rest of the second half of The House of Quark.
Yeah, as well you should.
Yeah.
And then at 9, what'd you do?
Well, I have one more thing to say about DS9.
Oh, yeah.
The reason why it's my favorite Trek show is because it's the least colonialistic.
Yeah, they're not traveling anywhere.
That's true. It's basically a critique of colonialism and imperialism, and it tackled racial issues more effectively than the other Trek shows.
Because it's sort of the remnants or the people who got screwed over from the colonialism, like the people left behind by the actions of the other shows.
That's right. Yeah.
It's sort of like having to face what you've done. Mm-hmm. Almost as a series.
Plus, your favorite character from Spencer for Hire is the captain.
He is. And he's
Avery Brooks.
A real strange guy.
Yeah, I've heard.
He'll just break into songs sometimes, or just start talking, making no sense. And you just
I still haven't seen that documentary Shatner did, The Captains, where Avery Brooks sings. I haven't seen that yet.
He does that often. If you watch any interview with him, you'll see that because that's just what he does.
But he has a spectacular singing voice, and he only got to show that like a couple of times on DS9.
Oh yeah, just a great voice in general. I mean, his speaking voice is great. But it was weird seeing him, because Hawk was a real just like somewhat two-dimensional character, but also really stoic. Like that was his whole thing. So seeing him in DS9 have like a son and like have like other emotions or laughing is really weird.
It's off-putting. I know.
Yeah, it's different for me. Then what'd you do?
Oh, at 9, Video Soul with Donnie Simpson and Sherry Carter on BET.
I would watch that occasionally. They would tend to show older videos on that, right?
During this era, no. They showed the most popular R&B and hip hop videos of the day.
Okay, so I'm completely wrong. But 94, we would have been getting like SWV.
Yeah, that. But when Donnie Simpson was the host, you'd get Lavert.
Okay.
Who else? Patti LaBelle, Anita Baker, those types of artists.
Montel Jordan
was there.
He's telling you
he had airplay on that show.
Telling you how they do it. The funniest thing in Beforentine, when we still had things outside, I was at an Italian grocery store eating a submarine sandwich, and there was a poster up for the North End in Boston, which is all Italian people. They have like a festival every week for some made up saint, and it was like Saint whatever's festival weekend, and headlining the festival, noted Italian American Montel Jordan. It was real weird.
That's a head scratcher.
Yeah, but hey, at least he's getting gigs, and I've not heard anything bad about him. Not that I've heard. So good for Montel. And is that your whole Monday?
No, there's more. There's a couple more shows at 9:30 p.m. I want to watch a Bob Newhart show rerun on Nick at Night.
Good call. I prefer Newhart, the 80s show, but the 70s show is really funny and always entertaining.
Yeah, my new book has an entire chapter on the Bob Newhart show because I did not watch that show until the mid 2010s or no 2017 or 2018.
And what was I presume you liked it.
Yeah,
because you have to.
Yeah, you have to. It's the law. It's the law.
It's funny that show is one of the most 1970s looking shows.
Oh God, like, Bob's Clothes. Man.
Yeah, like right up there with Barney Miller. But in content is one of the most timeless shows.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's very not locked down to a specific era for the jokes. It's not like a topical joke. Like it's just characters and it's great, but just visually it's so 70s. Just wow. Yeah. The ties.
Yeah. I was a fan of the writing of Jay Tarsis. He wrote like The Great Muppet. He co-wrote The Great Muppet Caper, my favorite Muppet movie. He show ran Smoldering Lust, which is a show nobody knows about, and I wish more people would know about it. And so we bombed in Burbank. There's a book about Smoldering Lust and Jay Tarsis and Russ Woody. Russ Woody's interviewed in that book. He was a guest on your show.
Yes.
But I was going to say that I didn't know that he co-show ran the Bob Newhart show for a few seasons with Tom Patchett. And so that's why I wanted to watch it on Hulu because of Tarsis.
He was an MTM guy. Was he in Teen Wolf?
Yeah, he was Coach.
He's
Vincent.
the coach. Yeah, it's like a rare on-screen role for him.
Right.
And I believe he pretty much ad-libbed all his lines in that movie. Like the one that always comes to mind, which is a very Jay Tarsis line, is like, never trust a woman with a scorpion tattoo.
Yeah. Which
is so not in the vein of everything else in the rest of that movie. It really stands out. But yeah, that's Jay Tarsis, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Then what'd you do?
At 10 p.m., the Jon Stewart Show, and John's interviewing Bob Newhart.
And the musical guest is Love Spit Love, which was sort of version 2.0 of the Psychedelic Furs. They had a minor radio hit at this time, which was weird. This was the syndicated Jon Stewart Show, which replaced the Arsenio Hall show.
Right.
And Jon Stewart had for 1 year had a nightly talk show Monday through Friday on MTV. I think it might have been Monday through Thursday. I think for like 7:30 to 8. It was a half-hour show, but it made a huge wave. Like it sort of got the buzz that Conan would get later.
Right.
Because I think by 94, Conan had just started maybe. Mm-hmm. And that like Letterman had in the early 80s when he was really doing interesting stuff. So Jon Stewart they were like, this guy's the new Letterman, basically. And so they gave him this show, and it didn't even last half a season. Part of it, I think, was they expected it to just continue Arsenio numbers. And the audience for the Jon Stewart Show was very different than the audience for the Arsenio Hall show.
Yeah.
But the reason is Arsenio Hall, his show was him replacing Joan Rivers.
Oh, that's right. He was a guest host of the Fox that Fox show Joan Rivers did, the Late Show.
Yes, and he became sort of the permanent guest host, and then they just made it the Arsenio Hall show. So I think they were thinking, because you really couldn't get people more different than Arsenio Hall and Joan Rivers. So I think they were like, well, that worked, so it'll just work like this too. And it didn't. But it was a pretty fun show. It definitely wasn't as irreverent and didn't have the sort of cool vibe that the MTV one did. It definitely felt a little neutered or like
a little watered down. Yeah. Jon Stewart's sidekick was Howard. Was he
Howard Feller
there during the syndicated?
He was, but he wasn't as utilized.
Oh, okay.
And it just didn't. It was okay. It wasn't as
the MTV version, because I remember the MTV version so well.
Yeah, there's a famous episode where Elizabeth Shue grabs Jon Stewart's junk.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then the final episode of the Jon Stewart Show was them introducing the state. So they had the whole state come on, which is like 37 people, and destroy the set. That was how they introduced them. And the state became a show when Jon Stewart Show went off the air, because Jon Stewart hosted a show prior to the Jon Stewart Show called You Wrote It, You Watch It, where the in-house sketch group was basically the state.
Right.
So it was a very weird thing, but yeah, good call on Jon Stewart Show. And that Love Spit Love record is great.
Mm-hmm. What's their signature song? I can't remember this band.
It was a song called Fall on Days, I think. And then there was a song that was like, I'm watching the world spin round and I can get lonely. It sounded like acoustic Psychedelic Furs, which it basically was. They had two albums.
Can we clear that song?
Yes. I need to pay for that, what I just wrote, what I just sang, because it was so spot on. Is that all you had for Monday?
No, during the Jon Stewart Show commercial breaks, I flip over to Northern Exposure.
A great show. This is the tail end of Northern Exposure. At this point, pretty much the main guy had more or less left. Like he was phoning it in. He didn't want to be there. They hadn't yet replaced him. They tried to replace. Well, they replaced him with Paul Provenza and tried to replace him earlier with Anthony Edwards.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they basically had Anthony Edwards come in as this doctor who was like germ phobic.
Yeah.
And they kind of brought him in as a way to be like, hey, watch yourself, or we're just going to make him the main guy. But then Anthony Edwards took ER,
Right.
and then they were like, oh shit, we don't have someone to threaten him with anymore. And he quit. And then Paul Provenza came in for the final season, but a great show, Northern Exposure. It really is good.
And a great show that we can't watch because of music clearance issues.
Yeah. Although in the UK, all the DVDs were released with the original music.
Oh, damn. I gotta go over to the UK, man.
Well, you can Amazon.co.uk if you have a multi-region Blu-ray player. You can buy the whole series on Blu-ray for pretty cheap. And they're nice transfers.
Because I have the DVDs with the butchered music and I've never bothered to watch them.
Yeah. I mean, because that show, you had a radio DJ was a main character.
Right.
And a lot of times the songs would sort of feature into the plots or like comment on the action. Like, it's pretty integral to the show.
Yeah.
But it's still great. Still a great show. That's Monday. Tuesday, what'd you do?
At 8 p.m., Wings.
I love Wings. I really do.
Yeah, it's unrated.
This was when they had moved it from Thursdays.
Yeah.
They were trying to have it anchor a night, sort of, which Wings wasn't really suited to do.
Yeah, it wasn't.
As much as I love that show. And I think it only lasted for another season or two in this slot. And this is when they introduced new characters.
Right.
Amy Yazbek came in, a few other people came in. Alex returns, who was like another actor. She had Dee Dee Pfeiffer's in this episode.
Yeah. I rewatched this episode for the purposes of this podcast. It was on Paramount Plus.
It's a funny episode.
Right. It's got Steven Weber as an old man in old man makeup.
Yes, because the idea is like it's basically like we're all going to be alone forever. It's a very dating heavy episode. Yeah. But Wings actually had one of the best female comedic casts of any show in the 90s. I mean,
Crystal Bernard was great on that show.
Crystal Bernard, the actress who played Faye, is amazing, and an older actress.
Right.
So it was pretty great cast. I've never seen an episode of Wings I didn't enjoy. I do want to mention Rescue 911 is on at this time, and I always feel obligated to read what the 911 calls were because I always find them amusing. This one is a little bit grim, I will say. But again, the good thing about Rescue 911 is you always knew everyone was okay. They never had an episode where like somebody died or something bad happened, as nerve-wracking as it was. And this
nobody died on Rescue 911.
Yeah. They were like, you felt you were invested. There were stakes, but you knew everyone was going to be okay. Yeah. And this is a dog that fell into an icy river in Montana, a woman in Louisiana who couldn't locate her young daughters, a man who attempted to save a woman after she was rear-ended at a railroad crossing and landed on the tracks as the train approached, a girl who called 911 during a domestic violence incident between her mother and estranged father. This might be the heaviest episode of Rescue 911 that I've read on this show.
That sounds like an episode of ER.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Maybe that's where they just stole all their plots from.
Yeah, probably. But I want to go back to Wings because in this Wings episode, Casey gets a bad haircut, and it's a sight gag that the writer of this episode was Howard Gewertz. I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but he was a writer on Taxi, and so Taxi had an episode where Elaine got a bad haircut from Ted Danson as a hairdresser. So I just noticed that it was similar to that sight gag, even though the writer of this episode didn't write that Ted Danson episode of Taxi. He's like, what's real funny? Redheads getting bad haircuts. Yeah. That's a comedy gold right there. He had to turn it in his pitch early and didn't have anything. And as we mentioned in the previous episode, one of the two competing Tom and Roseanne movies is on this night. That's right. The one with David Graff, who was the Tackleberry and the Police Academy movies, playing Tom, and Denny Dillon of SNL and Dream On fame playing Roseanne. This is a really wonderful
terrible movie. Danielle Harris is in this, who people may also know, who was on Roseanne as their neighbor, and also was in the Halloween 4 and 5 and a lot of horror stuff. But yeah, this is real bad.
What time is that movie on?
That is on at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock.
Okay, because we're still on 8:30. I wanted to ask you something about Tom Arnold. When is he going to find those tapes where Trump said the N-word?
Well, he knows where they are.
Yeah, so get him out into the open, Tom.
He doesn't have them. They're all, Mark Burnett has them all.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
they do exist though.
Okay.
8:30. What do you got? Also, I also don't think it would matter.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter now.
No,
Okay.
well, no, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I think the people who like him, they're just going to be like, if anything, they might be like, awesome.
Okay, so 8:30, the second half hour of part 2 of the Native Americans. It's a documentary series on TBS.
Yeah, this looked really interesting. So this they actually have a big article about, and this seems to be the first thing I can remember that is a pretty respectful, non-exploitive sort of documentary about the Native American experience in America. And actually, a friend of the show, Cliff Nestoroff, has a new book out called "We Had a Little Real Estate Problem" about the Native American history of comedy, which is really, really great. But yeah, I'm interested in this. I remember this airing, but didn't watch it. But now, especially reading Cliff's book recently, I'm interested to go back and watch this.
Yeah, since I'm a film and TV score nerd, I want to hear the original score by Robbie Robertson.
That makes sense.
He did a lot of score music for Scorsese movies. And so Robertson, he's of Mohawk and Cayuga descent. And I've heard some of the selections from this score album. They're all on YouTube, and the score's pretty good.
Is it sort of traditional, or is it?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Now I really want to check that out. Then what'd you do?
Oh, at 9, it's Robocop, the TV series
The
version.
series. So this was shot in Canada.
Yeah, shot in Canada. And this episode guest star. It's called, the title of the episode is Robocop versus Commander Cash. So it guest stars Roddy Piper as the titular OCP corporate mascot.
Commander Cash, played by Roddy Piper. A greedy marketing executive uses OCP's superhero mascot, Commander Cash, to push a mind-controlling breakfast cereal.
Yeah, I never watched this TV version, so I want to see this episode. And I never saw the 1987 Robocop movie until 2015.
Oh, man, it's amazing.
It is. It's my favorite superhero movie.
Yeah, I could see that. That's another movie I watched. RoboCop and Total Recall and Running Man were all pretty like comfort movies for me, like just those 80s action movies. And when Trump first got elected, I was sort of regressing into just like, I need to just zone out and watch some of my favorite movies. And those 3 movies were not good to watch because they were far too prescient.
They were.
What's going on. A RoboCop especially, like the satire in that movie is brutal and dead on. And RoboCop's amazing. That is such a good movie.
I couldn't watch it because of the scene where Peter Weller gets shot. It's too brutal.
It's really violent, like really violent. And I remember the show being on. I remember it seeming really cheap, but reading this show description, like the plot of this seems pretty in keeping with the satire of the original movie.
Oh yeah.
So I may check that out. RoboCop 3, written by noted human hater Frank Miller of the Dark Knight fame. He also appears in RoboCop 2 as a drug scientist, working for Tom Noonan. Do you ever hear the story of Peter Weller's musical inspiration in RoboCop?
No, I haven't heard this.
So Peter Weller likes to listen to music when he's acting. He's a very serious guy.
Yeah.
And so he had them build headphones into the RoboCop helmet so that he could listen to music in the scenes. And you know the scene at the end when RoboCop just lays waste to like everybody? Like he's just shooting everybody?
Yeah.
The song he's listening to is Red Rain by Peter Gabriel. So I always watch that scene now, hearing that in my head, and it changes things significantly.
Yeah, next time I watch that movie, I'm gonna go to YouTube and play that Peter Gabriel track during that climactic scene.
It's the new Dark Side of the Moon, Wizard of Oz matchup thing. Anything else on Tuesday?
Yeah, at 10 p.m. NYPD Blue.
Again, a show I never watched.
I did watch this. You never watched it?
No.
Okay, but I did watch this episode that night in 1994.
This is the season 2 premiere.
Yeah, and it's the first of 4 episodes David Caruso did before he quit. So I just want to watch it to see how much Caruso was phoning it in.
Yeah, you forget that it was that early in the show that in the first season he's like, I'm a big star now.
Yeah.
Screw you guys. I'm going to be a movie actor. I'm going to be in Jade.
Right. You got to read the late Stephen Bochco's memoir because he talks about how fucking difficult Caruso was on the set. He was like, he wanted to go straight to movies. He didn't want to be on a TV show again. He's just so difficult. And Dennis Franz was a sweetheart, which is funny because Dennis Franz was playing a total asshole and Caruso was playing a sweetheart, but in real life, he was terrible to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt it. I mean, he had been on Crime Story prior to that, Caruso, and he played a dickhead because he's really good at playing dickheads.
He was good at that
because he's a dickhead.
Yeah, because he is.
But oddly, gotten like a 4th career now with CSI Miami. I think he's on, which I haven't seen, but good for him. I would have been watching. Speaking of The Fugitive, which we mentioned last episode, MTV's Fugitive ripoff series, Dead 21. Yes. Ooh. With Whip Hubley and Jack Noseworthy. Their real names. Whip Hubley is Season Hubley's brother, who was married to Kurt Russell.
Yeah, that's right. She was in Escape from New York with Kurt Russell.
Correct. So Whip is her brother. And Jack Noseworthy was kind of a hot thing for a little bit. He's in the Brady Bunch movie in the 90s.
Breakdown, one of my favorite Russell movies.
Oddly, Kurt Russell showing up again. And so this show was about a teenager who discovers that he was part of some government experiment and he has some kind of like computer chip in his brain that's going to kill him when he turns 21 years old. So he goes on the run to find a cure or the way to get this out of there or whatever. Right. And he's trailed by a government agent played by Whip Hubley. The show, MTV pumped a ton of money into it. They were like, this is our first scripted series we've ever done. And I think it was only like 13 episodes. We never got a resolution. He probably died at 21. I don't know.
With Wanda from Doogie Howser by his side.
Yes.
She was the lead on this, the female lead on the show.
Yes. So I'd like to go back and see this at some point. MTV has really managed to bury this show. Like there's just it's nowhere. It's nowhere.
Well, it's because of, again, music clearance issues.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's not like it's a well-loved show that people are clamoring and demanding that is released or anything. Yeah. All those noseworthy maniacs out there. How is that a real?
Is this at 10 or 10:30?
That's a 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to NYPD Blue because I heard the Eric Deggans episode of your podcast.
Yes.
I agree with everything he says about NYPD Blue. It's hard to watch. It's hard to rewatch now because it glamorizes police brutality.
Yeah, it's cops doing it their way kind of thing.
Right. And Deggans, Eric didn't point out that it's because of Bill Clark. Bill Clark was a former NYPD detective. He was a technical advisor for the show, and he was later an executive producer. And that's why it's pro cop, NYPD Blue. Yeah. I hate to use the word. I don't like the word propaganda. You know why? Because propaganda sounds too much to me like, when a TVline.com recapper recaps Grey's Anatomy and says, "Hey, Grey's Anatomy's fans, did you catch the wedding of propaganda last night?" Yeah, it's also kind of a little too cute for what it is because it's kind of an insidious thing. And it makes sense though. Like the cops did and do those things, and in some ways, presenting them on this show should have made people go, "Oh my God, that's wrong." Which is the reaction we have now watching it. Yeah. But at the time, it was like, good for them. Good for them. Oh, well. That's Tuesday night. What'd you do on Wednesday? Oh, we're still on Tuesday night. Okay, what do we get? At 12:35 a.m., it's Late Night with Conan O'Brien. So this was the first season of Late Night with Conan O'Brien. I think it's the second, because he started in 1993. Did he start mid-season 93? Or it was in the fall? I don't remember now. 93. So this is right when he's sort of starting to get the first season, if I remember, was sort of, they didn't quite know what
they were doing.
He didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah. And they hadn't really got confident to do some weirder stuff. So like season 2 is when we started to get stuff like Pimpbot 2000 and some of the characters and some of the, I think the year 2000 sketch made its premiere that year.
Oh, I have the book. I have the In the Year 2000 book still.
Yep. It was John Glazer was hired as a writer the second season, who's such a great weirdo and has been on the show, and did a lot of really weird characters.
Right.
I used to tape Conan at this time and then watch it the next day.
I did that too.
And at one point, I think was airing the previous evening's Conans
that was Comedy Central.
Was it Comedy Central? Because they were airing Letterman's from the 80s.
It was CNBC and Comedy Central that aired repeats of Late Night with Conan O'Brien.
Which was cool because they aired it like right after school.
That's right. I remember that.
Really ingenious and like the perfect time to air that. Because that's who's watching it.
But you're going to want to watch this episode because Meryl Marco is the guest.
Oh, nice.
You've interviewed her on your podcast.
Yes.
So that was a good episode too.
Yes, and who was the former head writer of Late Night?
Oh, that's right.
So she's returning to the show with a different host, and it was unusual at this time to have the same show, different host. Like Letterman had always been the host of his own show. Carson was technically, I think, the third host of the Tonight Show, but was really the only host anyone knew. He'd been the longest running host of that show. So you'd have guest hosts sometimes, but you didn't have the same show, different hosts. Like that just didn't happen. So it was a big deal when Conan O'Brien got that show. And there was a lot of talk about who would get that spot. And the people that they had listed, Paul Provenza was one of them, actually. It was Alan Havey was one of them because he was doing Night After Night on Comedy Central. And the fact that Conan got it, who had never been on camera aside from a few sketches in SNL that he wrote, was really shocking to people. People were
I remember that.
What was this? But he had a great point of view and was irreverent. And if you look at Fallon, who is just a comedy eunuch and has no personality and no point of view, which is the exact opposite of what Conan and Letterman was.
Exactly.
Carson, it was like you've just taken everything away from what people liked about those shows.
Right.
That's my hobby horse. Wednesday, what'd you do?
Well, I'm one more show up for Tuesday at 1:35. You're gonna love this. Later with Greg Kinnear, he interviews Bonnie Hunt.
Oh, I've never seen this episode, and now I need to. Later was an interesting show because at first I think it was hosted by Bob Costas, who's a sports guy. And what they would do is for the whole week, because I think it was only a half-hour show. Yeah, they would do essentially a 2-hour interview with one guest. Right. It would be spread out over the week. It was a lot like a Dick Cavett show, but sort of broken up into individual episodes. Yeah. So there's 4 episodes with Roger Corman. That's easy to find. That's really good. This one, obviously, with Bonnie Hunt. There's a great one with Chris Elliott. Like there's some really interesting guests that have Mel Brooks, these one-on-one conversations. And now I need to dig up this Bonnie Hunt one because this would have been when I think her first show was just percolating. The Building came out in 95. I think it was a mid-season show. So she would have just started getting her own stuff and kind of moving away from being that perennial Letterman guest who had her on all the time, even though she was in a bunch of movies at this time. Wednesday, which
at 8 p.m. A Rock rerun on BET, and Rock has a bizarre connection to sound FX, which we talked about last time. Orlando Jones was a Rock staff writer before he started co-hosting sound effects, and then went on to Mad TV.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Rock was a show that was a pretty massive hit for Fox. And was a real throwback to Norman Lear shows. It really was. It had a real 70s Norman Lear vibe. Felt very New York.
No, it's set in Baltimore.
But very, very shot in New York kind of vibe. Those sitcoms that felt kind of not LA-ish.
Right.
And the cast was all New York theater people.
That's right.
So it definitely had a different vibe from sitcoms at that time. And would
created by Stan Daniels, who was from Taxi.
Yes, and had that sort of Taxi sad vibe. So Rock was a garbage man, Family Guy. There were some episodes that were just like straight up drama with no comedy really in them.
That's the later seasons when Rock was live.
Yes.
When it went live.
So it did a couple of sort of novelty episodes where they were like, it's live this 1 week. They do like one a season. And then they just decided the whole show is live now. So they'd literally do once a week, they'd do 2 live episodes of the show, because one for East Coast, one for West Coast.
Yeah.
And so there's 2 versions of every episode of that show for I think the last 2 seasons, which is weird. But a show that, again, super popular at the time, pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Aside from these BET reruns, which are kind of contemporary with the show still airing, never really reran after that. I don't think it's streaming anywhere.
No,
and sort of just forgotten. But a pretty...
Yeah, that's not fair. Yeah, that's unfair. Because I prefer this as a working class sitcom. I prefer it over Roseanne and Married with Children.
I mean, definitely Married with Children. I'd like to rewatch it again because I remember really liking it. And yeah, it was a great working class sitcom, and he was a garbage man, but was like a really smart, introspective, like, you never laughed at Rock.
That's right.
You never laughed at Rock. He was like the most respectable, fatherly, like sage person on the show.
Yeah, in the first season, it wasn't that way. What's weird about this sitcom is that on other sitcoms, characters get dumber. Rock got smarter as the show went on.
Yeah, because it started not quite like the Honeymooners, but it was a little bit of that kind of vibe. Like the husband who comes home like, oh, I had a hard day at work and my family's pissing me off, you know. But yeah, then they, which I think was probably the influence of
Charles S.
Who the character seemed to become more like him. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he killed a man.
I know that. Yeah.
I think he's the only convicted murderer to star in a television series.
He's the only convicted murderer to guest star on Homicide Life on the Street.
And the only convicted murderer to be in an Alien sequel.
That's right, Alien 3.
Yes, the prison movie one. So you're watching Rock, and then what'd you do?
Oh, at 8:30. All American Girl. I'm going to hate watch this one. I did watch this episode that night in 1994. I hated this episode.
Every episode of this show was not good.
The last time you said you didn't really like Empty Nest.
Yeah, not terribly. I liked Mulligan, but I didn't really care for Empty Nest.
Okay. The reason why All American Girl sucked was because its showrunner was not the showrunner was neither Margaret Cho nor an Asian American writer. It was a white guy from Empty Nest.
Yeah, and it's evident. It's really evident.
It is.
And you know, to be fair, that was the model at the time. Not necessarily we get a white guy from the show, but if we're building a show around a stand-up, we have a tried and tested television veteran develop the show with them. That was the model for everybody. It was Raymond, Roseanne, all of the shows built around stand-ups.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense, but absolutely wrong fit. Absolutely wrong fit. And Margaret Cho has talked about this ad nauseum, rightfully so. Mm-hmm. This being kind of the worst part of her life that, you know, gave her weight issues and so, you know, all these other things. But it got a ton of press as the first Asian American show, the first all Asian cast sitcom, and it was such a disappointment. It was like, and I imagine as an Asian person, you were like, this is not the one we wanted.
Because Margaret Cho is like famously profane. And she was just playing like this watered down, great value version of herself. Yeah.
Yeah. Margaret Cho's comedy would have been more, would have made more sense in a show more like Martin than a family sitcom. You know what I mean? Like that, like building, which again, I think wasn't even just a race thing. It was more of also like a gender thing. Like they would never have built a show.
No, Broad City is what I would have wanted Margaret Cho. That's the type of show I would have wanted Margaret Cho to do.
Yeah, that would have made sense. This was more like, it was almost like the Patty Duke show. Like it was
this really white bread, bland, white gazy sitcom because of the fucking white guy from Empty Nest.
Yeah. And I think what the guy took from her stand-up was her impression of her mother.
Oh yeah.
That was like all he heard.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
You know, like, oh, I get it. Funny voice. Let's have a yelling grandmother character. That's all we need.
Let's have a tiger lady mom.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. It was Judy Gold is in this episode, and Judy's super funny.
Oh yeah, she is. Yeah.
Garrett Wong was in an episode of All American Girl, actually.
Yeah.
or a few.
Ming-Na Wen is in this episode.
Yes.
Oh, she's so attractive in this episode. I remember she's the only good part of this episode.
Yeah, this show isn't even worth hate watching. Like it you just watch it and you just get mad.
Carsey Werner was often criticized for giving too much power to like toxic and abusive comedians and lead actors. This was All American Girl was a case where I wish Carsey Werner produced it, because Margaret Cho would have had more control over her comedic voice.
But I think it would have killed her. Because that was Carsey Werner's model. They would just basically feed those people anything they wanted, including drugs and alcohol or whatever they wanted, just to kind of, because they were like, hey, any press is good press. Make a big personality, and it would burn these people out. I mean, it almost killed Brett Butler.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Under Fire.
So not great. Then what'd you do at 9?
I just wanted to say one more thing about this episode of All American Girl. I hated how the BD Wong character was written, because on the show he was written as uncool and like
he's a nerd,
emasculated and straight, and BD Wong in real life is neither of those three things.
Yeah. Which you could go, hey, BD Wong's a good actor.
No, but I didn't want to see BD Wong playing that model minority stereotype. I wanted to see BD Wong play BD Wong at the time.
Yeah, he's like
I want to see Margaret Cho play Margaret Cho, not Great Value Margaret Cho.
Right. Yeah. It's a terrible, terrible show. And it's awful that it now forever holds the distinction as the Asian American show. and was the only one for like another 20 years.
Yeah. And then fresh off the boat and Kim's Convenience. Oh God, I'm so heartbroken over the cancellation of Kim's Convenience. It wasn't canceled, but the showrunners quit.
But they did
tell the cast that they're gonna stop doing the show.
Would they do 5 seasons or something? Though?
5 seasons of Kim's Convenience.
And if you haven't seen that show, it's on Netflix and a few other places. You can check it out. That is a good show.
Yeah, it is.
Then what'd you do?
At 9 p.m. the final half hour of MTV Primetime.
Okay, fair enough. So this is after Top 10 Countdown. They would, which I think was like 7 to 8 o'clock at that time, and then they would just kind of show, it was basically the top 10 again from 8 to 9. 94, I think we'd be getting like Heart-Shaped Box, Nirvana, or some other stuff like that. I probably either would have gone Roseanne or Models Inc.
Oh, Models Inc. with Carrie Ann Moss, I think.
Yep. So I mean, I loved that show.
I was going Halle Berry in that one, or was she?
No,
Living Dolls.
She was in Living Dolls. That's right.
Okay.
That spinoff of Who's the Boss?
No, it was Garcelle Bouveau, I think, was on Models Inc. Okay.
I believe so, yeah. And then what'd you do?
9:35 was the show we previously talked about. It was Walt Disney World Inside Out doing a segment on the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, which I got to ride before it became that Guardians of the Galaxy ride.
And this was in Florida, or is that in California, that one?
The Tower of Terror I rode in Florida.
Okay. I've never been to a Disney park.
Really?
Never had any interest in it. I don't like rides, really. I also don't like a lot of people or like waiting in line for things. Yeah,
that's interesting, because I told you I don't like going to concerts. I only went to 2 in my life, 3 in my lifetime, actually. I went to the Pinoy's Pop Punk concert that one year in San Francisco. It's a Filipino punk festival.
Oh, nice. I was like, I don't want to go to Disneyland. But I would watch stuff about it because I love the aesthetic, and again, any horror stuff I'm going to watch. Is that your whole Wednesday? No, but I wanted to go back to the Tower of Terror because the Tower of Terror was fun, but it wasn't as scary as the Paramount's Great America version of it, which was called The Edge. And Paramount's Great America was the theme park that we all went to in Silicon Valley in 1994. So The Edge was scarier than the Tower of Terror. And they were both drop rides. They just dropped you. Drop rides. So the Tower of Terror was always a weird ride name for me, because that's like if Six Flags opened the Playhouse 90 roller coaster of emotion. Yeah. It's not like Twilight Zone was a super popular show in the 90s among people going to amusement parks. I mean, it's a brand name people knew, but odd to even bother mentioning it there. Yeah, and the Guardians of the Galaxy ride is literally the same exact ride with a different video. So then what'd you do? The Tower of Terror TV movie with Steve Guttenberg and Kirsten Dunst, right? That's right. Yeah, it was around 95 or 96, I think. I've never seen that. I've never seen it either. I would watch that. It looked very Casper inspired. Oh, it did look like Casper, the live action movie. Yes. Christina Ricci. So what'd you do?
Oh, at 10 p.m. It's Law and Order, but it's the Sarah Paulson.
Yes.
It's Sarah Paulson in her first TV role, and she famously is embarrassed about it.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, there are Law and Order's official YouTube channel has lengthy clips of the episode.
Should she be embarrassed about it?
No, she's great in this episode.
Yeah.
I don't what's the deal? Why is she so embarrassed? She's fucking awesome in that episode.
Actors are weird, man.
Yeah.
I never really watched Law and Order. Again, like it was on. Also, I remember Law and Order was the one with Vincent D'Onofrio. Or was that Homicide?
That's Law and Order Criminal Intent. This is the original Law and Order with Sam Waterston and Chris Noth and Jerry Orbach and Joe Hennessy this season.
Right. So when I was going to college, my final for my avid editing class was not my final, my midterm was I had to edit together a sequence from a Homicide episode. It was the one where the guy falls in the train tracks.
Some episode, yes.
Yep. And so I just after that I was like, I don't want to watch this ever again because I watched hours and hours of the same footage over and over again. Not fun. Then would you do anything else or are you on to Thursday?
12:35 a.m. Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and Conan interviews Scott Thompson, one of my favorite guests from that late night era of Conan.
And Scott was on all the time. They loved having him on Conan. If you've seen the Kids in the Hall documentary, Same Guys, New Dresses, there's an amazing sort of subplot where Scott's going on Conan and he spills something on a couch and he's really upset about it because it's a beautiful couch. I was on Doug Loves Movies with Scott Thompson.
Oh.
That was very exciting. Thursday, what'd you do?
Thursday at 8 p.m. My So-Called Life, and it's the one where Sharon's dad has a heart attack.
Yeah, and this is a rare episode, and this was a sort of Sharon focused episode.
Oh, wait, I made a mistake. That's not the right Conan O'Brien episode. And I looked at the wrong episode. The episode that aired that night, Conan interviews Sandra Bernhardt and Wes Craven.
This is unforgivable. I will 94. I wonder where Wes Craven was promoted. New Nightmare.
Plugging Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Must have been New Nightmare.
That's one of the only 3 Freddy movies I've seen.
What are the other 2?
The one Rennie Harlan directed, which was
4.
Nightmare 4, and Freddy versus Jason. That's it.
Because Ronnie Yu did Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah, that's right.
Ronnie Yu is so great. Bride with the White Hair. Man, that's a good movie.
I haven't seen that.
Oh man, it's even Warriors of Virtue, which was his US debut, which is a mess and is a weird ass movie about like flying kangaroo people. Still looks cool, but Bride with the White Hair is sort of the quintessential Ronnie Yu movie. And it's like a Chinese, it's like literally, I mean, it's like the movie Chinese Ghost Story. I'm not just saying
I haven't seen a Chinese Ghost Story either.
Oh, that's great as well. But just visually it's amazing. And Ronnie Yu's a great director. He hasn't really gotten anything worthy of his skills in Hollywood, and it's a shame because like he did Bride of Chucky as well, and that movie looks just like that takes things to a whole new level of that series, and that's all him. Even for the
I haven't seen Bride of Chucky.
Dig into Ronnie Yu, but that's fine. We'll forgive your massive offensive mistake that you made.
What do you think? Craven's New Nightmare. What do you think of that one?
I love that movie. It's really ballsy to have made that movie. It's super meta. It's weird to see Bob Shea acting, playing himself.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But it's really, really interesting. And it was actually pretty well received even by fans of the franchise at the time. I think because Freddy's Dead was so panned and is a mess. Whereas I could have easily seen that becoming like the Halloween 3 where they're like, this isn't a Freddy movie. What the hell is this? But it's interesting because it also tees him up nicely for Scream in that he manages to make a movie that's almost as meta, but less obvious about it with Scream. And it's a really fascinating movie. And I'm glad they let him do it because it's a really weird pitch.
Heather Langenkamp playing herself.
Yeah. Or a version of herself. That's pretty close to real life. I mean, she is married, to a special effects guy and, is sort of playing herself, which is, again, just the 10 of us. Very weird. But this is a Sharon heavy episode. And up until this point, Sharon wasn't a villain, but she was not painted in as like cool. She was like kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's true. I remember that.
We like didn't really feel for her. This is Devin Adessa, who plays a prostitute in another show earlier this week. So she moves in with the Chases because her father has a heart attack.
Yeah.
And this captures that really fascinating part of life when you're young and your sort of childhood friends you're not friends with anymore, but you have a history with them still.
Yeah.
And because you're 14 or 15, having a 6-year history with somebody is a lifetime.
Uh-huh.
So it's really weird. And Angela's sort of forced to be friends with her again because she's living with them and is standoffish at first, but then you kind of get why they were friends. I think that was the thing that wasn't really conveyed earlier. Like, Angela moves this dude. It's just a really smart, really kind of well nuanced episode, I think.
Yeah, I didn't watch this episode until it aired on MTV months later.
Yeah, which is again, MTV when it canceled Dead at 21, picked up My So-Called Life,
right?
And it was a huge hit, way more than it was when it first aired. And MTV really is what made that show endure.
That's right.
But they managed to secure all the music rights, so that show has been available since sort of the early days of DVD, but even VHS releases. It's been relatively easy to see.
Yeah.
I love that show. Then what'd you do after that?
Oh no, during My So-Called Life's commercial breaks after 8:30, Living.
So during the commercial breaks, you'd go to Living Single?
Yeah.
And
I like more than Friends. What I was saying before the internet tried to interrupt me was that I like Living Single way more than Friends because I always thought Friends was a whitewashed Living Single.
As I did too, and as anyone with a brain did, because it's a much better show.
It is
because the characters still have struggles that are like real struggles.
Yeah.
For a sitcom, at least. It's better written. It's funnier. It has a much better cast. Just a better show, like all around better show. And it is literally on against Friends, same time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to choose. And if you chose Friends, you were wrong.
What would you have picked at 8?
At 8, I would have watched My So-Called Life. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No contest. Then what'd you do?
At 9, New York Undercover.
And you love this.
Well, I did watch this episode that night in 1994. So it hasn't aged well, but damn, in 1994, me loved New York Undercover. I actually watched this episode for the podcast because go ahead.
This show looked and felt like no other cop show at the time.
Oh yeah.
This is a Fox show, if I'm remembering. And it's sort of this is too reductive of the show, but it was almost like a serious 21 Jump Street. You know what I mean? Like it sort of managed to take some of the good things from that show and just build on them and make a really good gritty show.
Yeah, the hair wasn't as big on New York Undercover.
No. And it never will be. No one's ever will be again. Although, speaking of Asian Americans, 21 Jump Street did do, and I think it was Vietnam, one of the better sort of Vietnam-centric character episodes of a TV show of that era.
Yeah, I remember that episode.
Christmas in Saigon, I think it's called. Which is very good. It actually somewhat similar to the Hey Arnold Christmas episode.
I have never watched Hey Arnold. Tell me about it.
Oh, there's an episode where I think it's Vietnamese, but their neighbor is this guy. It's sort of a complicated thing, but they basically discover this guy who's a Vietnamese refugee. He's an older guy now. And it kind of goes into like how awful everything was. And it's a kid's show, a kid's cartoon.
Yeah.
And it's pretty well done and great. Then what'd you do?
Oh, I just wanted to add one more thing about New York Undercover, the guest cast. I rewatched this because the guest cast is impressive.
Who is it?
Okay, so Judy Reyes, Yancey Arias, and as the villains, Lawrence Gilliard Jr. from The Wire, Enrico Colantoni, and Mark Margolis.
I mean, there's a lot of connections to The Wire with the show, obviously.
Yeah.
And yeah, that doesn't surprise me. If you like The Wire, you should watch New York Undercover. I think that's fair.
Yeah. Oz. There are a lot of people from Oz on New York Undercover too.
That's true. But no one wants to watch Oz.
From Oz and Sopranos, Edie Falco played a cop on this show.
Yes.
A cop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if New York Undercover had been 2 years later, it would have been an HBO show.
True. Oh, another thing, this episode features one of my favorite Black Moon tracks, Buck 'Em Down, and one of my favorite dumb Miami bass tracks of 1994, Tootsie Roll by 69 Boys.
Oh, yes. I know Tootsie Roll. Don't know Buck 'Em Down, which shows you probably everything you need to know about those songs, about which one's dumb and which one's good. Anything else on Thursday?
Yeah, at 10 ER. I did watch this episode that night in 1994. It was the episode that guest starred Alan Rosenberg as the patient.
Yes. So this is Green tries to find a heart transplant for a critically ill patient, Alan Rosenberg. Ross gets involved with the girl's family, is unable to afford her medication, and Carter learns he may have a sexually transmitted disease. Because Carter was the young hot one. And really I feel like he's the only actor from that show that didn't go on to have a massive career. And he was the one everyone thought would be the breakout.
Well, he had that show, The Librarians, and now he's going to be on the Leverage reboot.
Those aren't, that's not Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, that's not George Clooney.
That's not Juliana Margulies.
Yeah.
That's, for the guy that everyone was like, this guy is the star of the show. When he first started,
right,
he was the star of that show. Clooney didn't sort of get the spotlight till like season 2. People were like, oh, it's Clooney. But Noah Wiley, I think is the name. Everyone was like, man, this guy, he's the next big thing. Friday, would you?
Oh, one more show on Thursday. It was the late night at 12:35 a.m. late night with Conan O'Brien with special guest Scott Thompson.
Okay, so we preloaded that one. Friday night, what do you got? Final night of the week.
Okay, 8 p.m. I Dream of Jeannie rerun on Nick at Night.
Classic show. I'm a Bewitched, but I would always watch an I Dream of Jeannie. If it's on, I'm going to watch it.
And Larry Hagman is hilarious on that show. For a guy who was drunk on the set of I Dream of Jeannie and hated the scripts, he brought it. He's
not phoning it in. Like, he shows up for work.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Even if it's plastered.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the way America used to be in the good old days when you'd show up drunk and do your job. I would have
Eden and Bill Daly were great on that show.
Oh, yeah. It was just a great cast. I would have got Unsolved Mysteries. Even though it's a boring one, it's about psychics and like one of those Lost Loves ones is kind of a more boring episode. But so what did you do after I Dream of Jeannie?
At 8:30, Comic View on BET.
I didn't like Comic View that much because
Why not?
It felt like neutered Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it was a lot of the same comics. And if you saw them on Def Comedy Jam and then saw them on Comic View, you'd be like, what are they doing? Because they'd have to do, obviously, like cut it neutered or edited or not their strongest material, but it had to be clean. And it was just weird. It was kind of a weird thing to see. But I get that it was cool on a basic cable station to have, an urban, it wasn't always all black, but stand-up comedy show, but it wasn't the best showcase for a lot of those people.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't know if this is the era when D.L. Hughley was host or Cedric the Entertainer was host, though. But I remember watching when D.L. Hughley was the host, and yeah, he was great with the insults on that show.
Was D.L. Hughley the one who was in that On Our Own?
No. It was the first name of the star of On Our Own was Ralph.
Okay, I can't think of it.
It was a stand-up comic named Ralph, and I can't remember the last name.
Yeah.
It wasn't Did. That's Ralph Dibny's the elongated man.
Yes, which would have been a great guy to have as the dad on that show. But yeah, Comic View was always sort of disappointing, but again, it was there. If you couldn't find anything to watch, I would have gone Bewitched, obviously, as I previously said.
You watched Comic View to see D.L. Hughley throw jabs at the audience. That was the main reason to watch.
Because that part of the show felt anarchic and dangerous is the wrong word, but like exciting.
Yeah.
It didn't feel scripted like the rest of it did.
The crowd work.
Yeah. 9 o'clock, what did you do?
The X-Files.
This one is Mulder is called to a hostage situation where the gunman is a former FBI agent and he claims to be an alien abductee, but Scully finds reason to have the man is a psychotic liar. Part 1 of 2. CCH Pounder is in this one. And it's Steve Railsback. Who played Charles Manson.
I was going to say Life Force.
Life Force, yeah, he was also in The Stuntman, but he was Charles Manson in the Helter Skelter made-for-TV movie.
Yeah.
But this was one of the big mythology episodes, if I'm remembering.
It was, and it was the one thing I remember. I might have watched this episode in 1994. I can't remember, but I just remember that Gillian Anderson was very pregnant in this episode.
Yes, and but not in the episode.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
It was like in real life and obvious to everybody, but not within the context of the episode.
And if Joss Whedon saw Gillian Anderson, he would have called her fat.
Yeah, and then he would have vomited and fired her.
Right.
From the show. But this is where we started to get more of the conspiracy stuff in here.
Yeah. That's right.
And I think we had like Cigarette Smoking Man came in around this time. This was kind of when we started really amping up to like the sort of peak of X-Files, which I think was 97, right before that first movie is kind of when it peaked. That stuff. But yeah, this was a good episode. Part 1 of 2. Good choice.
And then during the commercial breaks, I would have watched Under Suspicion. I would have flipped over to Under Suspicion, and the episode, that Under Suspicion episode that aired, was one that I watched a few months later on VHS, because I remember that I was on an AOL message board, and I got this Under Suspicion fan to send me tapes of Under Suspicion episodes I missed. And that was
I have no recollection of that show.
Under Suspicion is it's like an American Prime Suspect. It was filmed on location in Portland, and it starred Karen Silas as the Jane Tennyson-ish homicide detective.
So this is an abducted teen is found murdered, and Phil must work with the squad's 2 new detectives to piece together the evidence. This is a procedural.
Phil is the Karen Silas character.
Okay. Did that last very long? I don't remember that show.
No, it only lasted for 1 season.
That would make sense. Then what'd you do?
Oh, okay. This is the final show at 10 p.m. Homicide Life on the Street. And I did watch this episode that night in 1994.
Third season opener.
Yeah.
Tony Todd is in this episode.
That's right.
People know as Candyman. This is
Candyman, the original Candyman. I did not watch that until last year.
What'd you think?
On Netflix. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
A little too white savior-ish for me, but it was a great movie.
It's pretty amazing. Did you cover it in the book?
No, I was too late.
It's too late.
To do it in the book.
It is sort of white savior-ish, but the original book, the original story that it's based on, had nothing about race in it at all.
That's right, yeah.
So the introduction of that was kind of fascinating, and seeing Cabrini Green was kind of fascinating, which we had only seen in Good Times previous to that. Like, this was like a much, really, really interesting, expensive take. One of the best horror movies of the 90s, easily. But Tony Todd is a great actor, and a very large man. He's very, very tall.
I have a Candyman action figure.
Oh, I do too, from the McFarlane line.
Yeah, the McFarlane toy company, whatever.
But that one's from Farewell to the Flesh.
Yeah.
The sequel.
It's the Candyman 3 action figure.
Yeah. But there you go. So this is the third season opener. So Homicide had been on for 2 seasons and was kind of on. Like, it did okay. It had some critical success.
Yeah, this was after the Robin Williams episode that aired and saved the show.
Mm-hmm. And so everyone was really kind of excited for season 3. Like, it got they put money into promoting it.
Right.
And it sort of really took off with this season. And this episode is the third season opener finds the Baltimore detectives trying to solve the murder of a woman who had recently been chosen Samaritan of the Year while working overtime. Pembleton meets and clashes with his racist counterpart, Lieutenant Russell.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
This really amped up the show, and it became sort of a put it on the cover TV guide type show at this point.
Right. The cold open of this episode, you have to see the cold open because it's subtweeted NYPD Blue, because, Blue became a smash hit during the previous Homicide's previous season, and Daniel Baldwin he represented the popularity of NYPD Blue. So the cold open had this clip of a fake NYPD Blue type sex scene playing on the break room's TV in the background. And it's Munch talking about how he's eerily predicting that print will die out and there'll be 500 channels and TV viewers will become more interactive. And then the cold open ends with Ned Beatty as Bollinger saying, "I wish they'd bring back Hawaii Five-0." It's on Tumblr. The cold open, it's not on YouTube. It was on Tumblr. I saw a bunch of GIFs or GIFs. of the cold
Oh,
open.
weird. And Ned Beatty would say that, I think, just as in general. But yeah, great show. Absolutely. It's on against some really good shows too. Like I'll Fly Away is on also, which was the classic Save Our Show. And Picket Fences, which is another fantastic show. Paul Winfield's in this episode. So it's kind of a tough choice. You have three like critically acclaimed good dramas on at the same time. And you know, you could at most watch two if you taped one and watch the other one. But yeah, I think Homicide was probably the way to go there.
No, Homicide was special to me. I remember writing Cindy Marlowe. I found out she was on AOL, so I sent her a piece of fan mail saying, God, the editing on this show is brilliant. You're better than NYPD Blue and shit like that. And I was like one of only two people in high school who watched Homicide. The other person was my journalism classmate, Reza Simpson. And we became friends. One of the reasons we became friends during journalism class was because we both watched Homicide. And Reza, she's gone on to become this, like, one of the most highly regarded Black and Filipino choreographers in the Bay Area. She runs the Push Dance Company in San Francisco, and she's doing amazing work. I'm so proud of her. She's like doing choreographing all these dance pieces about like fighting systemic racism and like Black history in San Francisco and Filipino history. And I remember, she really loved Andre Braugher's acting.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how obviously representation is important, and we've kind of talked about that in both of these episodes in a lot of ways. Yeah. But Homicide was a show that sort of broke a lot of ground in that area as well, because we got Black characters that weren't the detective's sidekick or like his partner. You know, like it sounds stupid now, but it was unusual to have that. And, you know, I think that makes a big difference. Didn't you got fan mail back too when you wrote to her? Didn't you?
Cindy wrote me back on AOL.
Yeah, which is pretty exciting. God, AOL dial up. Those CDs were gold. You got free hours. Yeah, you got free hours in the AOL CDs.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say it wasn't just middle-aged white folks who watched Homicide. It was shy, socially conscious teens of color like me and Reza.
Yes, who went on to do great things. Both of you, including your new book, which we'll plug again. It's not a new book, but it's newly in paperback. People can go on Amazon and get it. Tell them the title again.
If you haven't seen it, it's new to you. The movies and TV shows, some of us regretted not catching until later.
We almost got into a who's on first situation there, where I said, "What's the name of your book?" And you're like, "If you haven't seen it, it's new to you." And I'm like, "No, tell me what the name of the book is." So there you go. Well, thank you for doing this. We did it in 2 parts. We thought it was going to take 6.
I just wanted to say one more thing about Homicide. James Yoshimura, us Asian Americans, we need to give him more of a shout out because he was a writer on Homicide, and he wrote the Subway episode.
Yeah, which was the most famous episode for a long time, I think, because it was such based on a real thing, but that concept was crazy. Basically a bottle episode. Well, thanks for doing this. I'm glad we got to do it. Maybe in another 6 years we'll do another 4 hours.
I have to move out of my parents' house, or we're moving to a new house, and so I found a bunch of TV Guide. I found a couple of TV Guide issues I didn't know were in the house. I found this.
Oh, nice! I have that one as well. It's the 50 grade.
I want to hear the Ben Blacker episode where he talks about this, and then for my next issue, if I ever do a second episode, I want to cover this issue. Oh
yes, the Janet Jackson cover issue. Yes, speaking of covering, I love Janet. That's a great issue. Yeah, we'll do that in the future.
I still have a crush on post Rhythm Nation Janet.
Who doesn't? You'd have to be insane or dead not to. Lowercase Janet, period. Jesus Christ. But I could talk about that all day. Cool. Well, thank you so much. And we did it. I'm proud of us.
Yeah, we did it.
That's Jim. Buy his book. That's it. Just buy it. You'll love it. Get the paperback copy, sit it next to your TV. If you don't know what to watch, open a random page and just watch what you land on. We'll read the page first and then watch what you land on, because it's a great read, and he's a good dude, and I like talking to him. Obviously, we talked for 4 friggin' hours. There's not many people I talk to for 4 hours that I don't like talking to. Family excluded. Family excluded. Anyway, we'll be here next week, so I hope you will too for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
Yeah, I wish Admiral Akbar was there for like when I graduated in high school or college.